Hi, I'm Mary Beth Gilliam, and this is the Outperform Cancer podcast, where we discuss actionable anti cancer strategies found in peer reviewed scientific research. We're opening up the new year with an incredible story for you, one that inspires hope and teaches us a super important lesson, the lesson of advocating for ourselves. We're talking to my friend and fellow patient advocate, Teri Pollastro. Teri was first diagnosed with stage 0 breast cancer. That's sometimes referred to as DCIS, which stands for ductal carcinoma in situ. And it's generally perceived to be the absolute best diagnosis you could have if you're going to have a diagnosis of breast cancer. Well, Teri's story is incredibly close to my own. I also was diagnosed initially with DCIS. And like me, Teri was told that after her mastectomy, she was pretty much cured. But unfortunately, also like me, the cancer returned years later, and it returned as stage 4 metastatic disease. The news that she had incurable cancer was a very tough blow, one that impacted Teri's physical and mental health. But she was determined to do everything she could to survive. Because she had 2 young daughters, and like all other mothers out there, she would do everything she could to be here for them. And fortunately, because she was her own advocate, she discovered 2 very innovative medical technologies and a series of adjunct therapies that gave her some astounding results. It has been over 22 years since Teri was diagnosed as a stage 4 breast cancer patient, and she is still cancer free. That's right, 22 years. So I hope you'll join us as we discuss her personal cancer diagnosis, the innovative treatments she pursued, and additional therapies that she continues today. But before we jump in, I'd like to ask you a favor. If you've been enjoying this podcast and would like to support it, the very best way to do that is to take a moment to follow the podcast, click like, add a comment, or best of all, share it with a friend. All of this engagement really helps me provide this content to you. You can also go visit outperformcancer.com and sign up for our newsletter. Okay, so now let's welcome Teri Pollastro. Hello, Teri. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Thanks. Good to be here.
I'm hoping that you can jump right in and take us back to your original diagnosis. What was your stage and prognosis at that time?
I was told I was DCIS, and not even sure they staged me, but I believe it was 0 because I had a mastectomy. There was no lymph node involvement because I had a sentinel lymph node biopsy. And so I never required any chemotherapy. Herceptin was not an option at that point, nor do I think they would have even considered it. So I had a mastectomy. I was told I was cured. It was DCIS, garden variety cancer, best prognosis you could want. 4 years later, I became metastatic with mets to my liver. And my liver was fairly diseased by that.
So your liver was fairly diseased, meaning was there just one tumor or were there more than one? Was it?
Yes. I was lucky that there was no direct involvement of the, I don't know, bile duct, artery. I can't remember what that is. I was just lucky that way. And then, my liver regenerated, right? One lobe is no good and the other lobe has taken on, the role of my whole liver.
Wow. So you were able to, but did they do surgery on the liver too?
No.
No. But you did get treatment of that liver. Is that right?
Yeah, I had chemotherapy followed by and Herceptin, followed by shape beam radiation treatment, and then a vaccine. Those are all the treatments I had.
So the shape beam radiation therapy, SBRT, I actually just spoke to Dr. Henry Park from Yale about this. He is a radiation oncologist, and there have been so many advances with that. Very targeted, very intense radiation treatment. That is a big area of improvement for cancer patients right now. But back then, when you were diagnosed, that must have been some pretty cutting edge treatment.
It was.
Now, did you advocate for yourself for that? How did you
Yes.
hear about it? What
So
happened?
I started lurking on the internet. A lot of things I didn't want to see because they were all so negative and so many people were dying. And here I was, this young mom, and I was just hoping for a glimmer of hope. Right?
Yes, like so many
And
of
then
us. Absolutely.
I heard about this shape beam radiation treatment. It was being done, in Rochester, New York, which is close to where I grew up. And I sent him my information and he called me on the phone and said, "When can you get here? I can help you." And those words were golden to me.
Yes.
And so I went back and I had my treatment. And at that point, his scanning equipment was cutting edge. And so I would go back there for my scans.
Oh,
And because then they were watching my liver, and, there's a dark period after you have radiation where they can't really tell what's going on. But he was very good at looking at all of that. And, you know, I to this day, I think this guy was just fabulous, but he always equated it to his physicists. He said they were the rock stars. So when I had treatment again in 2015, when I had that progression, I did the same thing. Once they um, got the tumors, so they were very, very small, and I just had some residual disease, I went back to him and he um, treated me with radiation.
so you go on a limb, you do some research online, you identify there's this thing SBRT, you
Mhm.
get the radiation, which is cutting edge treatment, and then you also go into a phase one, no less, clinical trial to also get a vaccine. So
Right.
you must have been, I don't know, were you a risk taker? Were you just on the war path? Did you have an incredible doctor? I mean,
All of the
many
above.
cancer patients just aren't thinking so out of the box, but clearly you were thinking out of the box.
And my husband and I would always say that. And I loved my medical oncologist because she would never get her ego involved, like that she didn't think of it or see it. And when I went to her with the shape beam, she was like, "I just heard about this guy. I was just at a conference with him and blah, blah, blah." And so she said, "You know what? Let's go for it." She was always very upbeat. When I first got diagnosed, I left this part out. My first infusion, this nurse comes in the room. And again, let's put it all into context. I could tell she felt bad. I was a young mom. And she says to my husband and I, "You're in the wrong place and you're getting the wrong drugs. They should be giving you the big guns."
Mm.
And so my husband, when we saw the doctor the next time, we always did good cop, bad cop. I was good cop, he was bad cop. And he
Okay.
said, "Look, I got to tell you what we heard."
Yeah.
And she didn't miss a beat. She didn't, like, again, no ego involved. She just said, "Give me 6 weeks. And if we can't get you where you want to be, I will get you in anywhere you want to go in the country." And she said, "Why would I start big when if I can do the same thing with small?"
Yeah.
So we went with, weekly Taxol, which she had said also, she was really big into research. And she said, "There's something that says that people who have weekly Taxol do a little better." Now, I don't know if that's still the same because I know
Mhm.
they more than likely give it every 3 weeks now. So I don't know if that's still
Well,
what.
I think it's a good point. I had it weekly as well. And I had Taxol as well, where it's just a little gentler on your system. And so that you don't have this big swings, where three
Yeah.
weeks you get chemo and then you have this fall off for 3 weeks and then this big dose. It allows you to kind of maintain a steadier.
I really liked things that way.
I did
And
too.
when you said, am I a risk taker? My kids always call me the rule breaker. And I am a rule breaker, but I didn't, I was just really, really focused on raising my kids. And I was going to do whatever I could to give myself a better chance. I think that said it all. I wasn't just going to go do some voodoo or think that, if I took this drug, that they, don't recommend.
Right. It wasn't like you weren't looking for magic, and you weren't willing to take risks that were not backed up by data.
Right.
But when there were opportunities, when you could find opportunities that were appeared to have good reasoning behind why doctors thought that this would work, you were willing to color outside of those lines
Right.
and go after, pursue those kind of, I'll call them more aggressive treatments, even though the cancer vaccine in particular has almost no side effects. Is
Yeah,
that correct?
I had no side effects from that at all.
No
My
side
biggest
effects.
was waiting for the hour to be up. I was like, come on, let's go. I got things to do. Really, just sitting there. But it was all, good. I'm teasing. Yeah,
Yeah.
I just want to chop, chop. My friends call me chop, chop because I'm like, chop, chop, let's go.
Let's go. Yeah. So you had a young family. You were facing this, diagnosis of metastatic disease. You had two beautiful daughters. You had a lot to live for, and you went for it. You pursued the shape beam radiation therapy, then you pursued the vaccine. Let's dig into that, because you did make a decision back in 2004, I believe, to
Yes.
participate in a clinical trial. And
Yes.
it was, my understanding is your diagnosis is hormone receptive negative
Correct.
and HER2 positive.
Correct.
So you were in a HER2 positive cancer vaccine clinical trial that was
Correct.
produced by Dr. Nora Desis and her
Yes.
team.
Yes.
And so if you could tell us a little bit about how you heard about that trial and what was going through your head at the time, because that was a big decision.
Right. So my oncologist, Julie Graylow, had told me about this clinical trial. And I went up and I met with Dr. Desis, and my husband was with me. We had a bunch of questions, and we decided that it would be a good path for me to take. And so I believe I had 5 vaccines. I'm not positive on that one. We might have to go back and check that. But it was in 2003. In the fall, I was NED at that time.
NED meaning
No evidence of disease.
okay.
But they keep changing the names right now.
Right.
No evidence of active disease. And no, that's not true. It was 2004. See,
That's okay. It's okay. So 2004, your
Yeah.
doctor told you about this new clinical trial. And what was going through your head? Were you thinking, I mean, a phase 1 clinical trial is usually about safety more than efficacy. And a lot of
Right.
people out there are concerned about phase 1 clinical trials being dangerous. Did you
Right.
have concerns about it being dangerous, and how did your doctor speak to you about that?
Well, I was very ignorant about clinical trials. I had no idea there was so much safety built into running a trial. So I don't know what else to say. I was so ignorant. I knew nothing. And so I went up there with a lot of what I would call ignorant questions. And Dr. Deeses just sat down with my husband and I and just explained everything very matter of fact. There was no pushing us to do the trial, you know. She just said I was a candidate and would I like to try it? And, you know, these were their thoughts on what would happen. And my oncologist told me, Teri, we just want to get you a drug, another drug that's going to push you out till the next thing comes out there.
Yeah.
And so I went into it thinking, okay, maybe this vaccine will push me out. So there were 22 of us, and I think I was number 3.
Wow.
And then I would go up and I would have my vaccine, and then I'd have to sit there for like an hour to make sure I didn't have a reaction. I remember saying to Dr. Deeses, so am I going to like wake up one day and I'm going to have a penis on my forehead or something? Gets me, don't know what's going to happen. You can cut that part out, but I really did say that to her.
I don't know. I think people would think that's pretty funny. I mean, but yeah, you're wondering like, okay, I'm sitting here, I'm getting this. You're not too worried because you don't even know what to be worried about. But then you're like, is this going to make something bizarre happen? Am I being a guinea pig? Right. That sounds to me that you were asking that question.
I was feeling like that initially. And then I felt empowered, like I can help other people by doing this.
Mm-hmm.
And so my mom was here again, and she came with me, and her and Dr. Deeses would just sit there and as we're waiting, and I'm like, hello, I'm here, you know. So it was really, it was very nice. They would chase me down the hall to give me a parking pass so I wouldn't have to pay.
Yeah.
You know, they were really great about that. They worked around my kid's schedule so I could have my vaccine right kind of in the middle of the day when I'd have some time on both ends, get my kids to school and then get home to get them.
Right.
Yeah. And then the Lupe Salazar was involved. She was incredible. And Dr. Salazar, I should say. And Dr. Sasha Stanton also was involved with Dr. Deeses' group at that point. And I just really felt a bond with them. Mm-hmm. And so as time went on, I kind of bugged them. I'm like, well, when is this going to ever be published? You know? And then it became published, and I learned that out of 22 of us, 21 were able to take the vaccine, and half of us were still alive at 5 years.
And how did that compare? Did you feel at that point that had improved your statistics?
I did. You know, I don't know if it was maybe the combination of Herceptin or trastuzumab with the vaccine. I'd also had some shake beam radiation done on my liver after chemotherapy because I had a little residual disease. And so we went and did that, which was pretty unusual back in 2003 that I had in 2003. And so I didn't really know, but I felt really good about the vaccine. And I really feel like that is such an under-researched area to this day. And it makes me really sad to see where the country is right now and cutting these researchers off. Because, I mean, without them, I wouldn't be here.
Right. So that's
none of us.
No, right. Yeah, for sure. Me neither. Now, you were not just at the 5-year mark as, hey, you were still alive. At the 5-year mark, my understanding is you still had no evidence of disease.
Oh, correct. Yes.
So it's not just, it's one thing, I think, statistically at five years, back then it was far less than half would have been alive at 5 years, let alone have no evidence of disease. Do you know if the other women in your cohort Were also no evidence of disease the ones that were still alive, or was there a range of um, kind of progression?
I think we need to ask Dr. Desis that question, but I believe the majority of us were still on HER2 targeted therapy. And so for me, it was just trastuzumab, Herceptin. Perjeta hadn't been out when I
Right.
first got diagnosed. So when that came out, I was so excited because, as my oncologist said, we just need another drug to put in your back pocket. So when you progress, we have something else to give you,
Right.
right?
Mm-hmm.
But I never did progress.
Mm-hmm.
And then in 2010, I just got tired of, so now I'm 7 years out. I'm like, I don't want to do this anymore. I don't want to keep coming up here. I got very good at telling them what they were doing wrong in the infusion room. I'd tell my doctor, well, they really could do this instead of that. Because I spent so much time up there.
Right.
And so I decided I would like to stop taking trastuzumab, Herceptin.
And so, okay, I just want to take a time out there.
Yeah.
So here you are 7 years later, after being told you're metastatic, and you have had no progression of disease. So you are still no evidence of disease. And you think to yourself, what? I'm cured, so I don't have to do this anymore?
I guess I did, even though they didn't say that back then. Now they do with people. But in my case, I really wasn't, because once I went off the Herceptin, it was a several years. My disease progressed again in my liver.
Okay, so how long did it take for it to reappear?
Well, that's a little shady because for some reason, my tumor markers fell off my orders for my blood work.
Okay.
And I didn't notice because I wasn't paying attention. Now I always pay attention. Um, and they had gone to a new system. And anyways, we figured it out as soon as they ran them again. They were elevated.
And so as soon as they ran them again, how much time had passed? Like
5 years. It had been
so
5 years.
you were 5 years with no medication,
Yes.
zero medication. And then 5 years later, you get this, something, it's the tumor markers that were again like alerted
Yeah.
you versus a scan or something else.
Right. So then we proceeded with the scans, and they tried all these different ways to get a biopsy of it. And this surgeon at University of Washington, who I just adore, Dr. Young, I said, I know you can get in there and get this. I want a biopsy because I wanted to make sure that it hadn't mutated and
Okay.
lost its HER2 status.
Yeah.
So I'm not sure if that's even the right word, but
Yeah.
as it becomes, just
Yeah. That's right. Sometimes cancers can mutate when they return, and they can change from a HER2 positive to a HER2 negative, or
right.
even, if you were estrogen negative, it can even go the other way and become positive. So
Right.
yeah, absolutely, there can be mutations and changes. So you get the biopsy back, it's HER2 positive, and then what happens?
My oncologist put me on TDM1 or Kadcyla, which has Herceptin built into it with a chemotherapy drug. And I didn't do very well on that. It was every 3 weeks, and I just didn't feel well. And when I'd had chemotherapy the first time, I felt really good. And I was exercising, trying to just take really good care of my body. And so I was trying to do the same things again, and it just wasn't working. So she said, you know what? I'm going to pull you off of this. Your liver enzymes are elevated, and I'm going to put you back on Herceptin. And so I did. And then I became NED.
So
NEAD, whatever.
back on the original drug, your first line therapy, even though,
Yeah.
I mean, sort of it was progression, but I would say, it's a little less, it's not the norm for progression because most
Right.
people are not going off of medicine.
Right.
But you were able to go back on your original therapy And that provided you with no evidence of disease. Again, you were able to knock it back.
Right. Yep. And I was getting more and more involved in advocacy during this time. And they started a group at the Cancer Vaccine Institute at University of Washington, an advisory board. I was involved in that. But in the meantime, I was approached, I believe it was 2016, I was approached. I didn't do this until 2018. I just verified that. I did a booster. They found that, there were half of us were still alive. And so now it's what, 13 years later, about. And so half of us were still alive and they offered us a booster. You didn't have to take it. I chose to get the booster. Two boosters.
Two boosters. And so those boosters were provided to you after your we'll call it a recurrence, after the recurrence, and you had started on back on Herceptin. And then this opportunity came about where you could have a booster of the original vaccine.
Right. And somehow, I think they just amended the original clinical trial to add that. I believe, again, that'd be something we need to check with Dr. Desis on.
Mm-hmm.
So I had the two boosters of that in 2018, and I've been on Herceptin again since 2015.
So you just keep going on your every 3-week cycle. I'm assuming every 3 weeks.
Yes.
It's the same drug that I receive. I'm still going. I show up at the infusion center. They're like, here she is again.
Yep.
But I have to say, here I am 5 years in. Here you are 22 years in. That is a lot of cycles of that drug.
Yes. It's kind of funny because when I've been asked like what I would like with this drug, I said, oh, it'd be great to be able to take it sub-Q, or a shot. And so they developed that. But unfortunately, they missed the second part of what I wanted was I want to do it myself at home or have someone come to my house. If I have to go up to the infusion room, I already have my port. Why would I still have to wait for them to draw the drug. It's only a half an hour infusion.
Yeah.
I'm like, no, I'm not going to switch over to getting, I believe it's 2 shots. I'm like, that there isn't enough of a win for me. Now, I could do it at home, so I wouldn't have to go up there.
Right.
I'd be all over that.
Yeah, well, that I was just switched over to Phesgo, which is the subcutaneous, meaning they'll just give it to you a shot in the thigh of the combination of Herceptin and Perjeta. And you're right. You still have to go to the infusion center. It saves a little bit of time because I used to have the 2 drugs. I'd have to wait for one to finish before I started the other one. So there is some time advantage to it for me. But it certainly isn't like being able to do it from home.
I've gotten to the point where I would love, and I'm really advocating for this. I would love for someone to be able to do a clinical trial. There are clinical trials where you stop Herceptin, right?
Yes, there's one actually at Dana-Farber right now. It's called Stop Her2.
Right.
And Dr. Heather Parsons is the principal investigator on that study, in case anybody out there is interested, where they will take you off of your drug if you've had no evidence of disease, anything beyond 3 years. So if you've been cancer free for 3 or more years, you might be eligible for that trial. Now, are you thinking about that again? Are you thinking about going off the drug again?
No. And what I'd love, and Dr. Parsons, I just drive her crazy. I would love for her to run a trial where they could do like 4 weeks of Herceptin. They're only basing it on the 3 weeks because that's what they originally did with the clinical trial of Herceptin. Okay, so why don't we check 4 weeks and then 6 weeks and then 8 weeks? And for someone like me and maybe many others who, either they could scan them
Yeah.
or in my case, just do a blood draw.
Yeah.
We then could have more of a life. Now, there are times when I miss treatments and I wish that my my team would be more comfortable with that. But
Yeah, I've heard, I do know that there are some cancer patients who work with their doctor and say, look, I want to stretch this from 3 weeks to 4 weeks. I'm comfortable with that. I think that's right for me. I do know that there are some patients out there doing that. We're not recommending it. Clearly, it's, all the data is off every three
right.
weeks. But yes, but I
There
do
is
know
no
there's
data on anything else, right?
Yeah,
And it's
right.
like, come on, let's do this.
It would be nice to know. It would be nice to know.
Yeah.
So, I want to understand, you've been cancer free for 22 years. Were there any times when you were afraid of recurrence?
Yeah. You know, every time I would be getting ready for scans initially, my husband and I, we would kind of what we called circle the wagons. And we would just stay home and be quiet with our kids and maybe play games as we prepared for the scans because we were trying to prepare ourselves for what could be. And there were times when there's like, well, we might see something there, we might see something there. I call them the barnacles of life.
Yeah. Sure.
You get scanned enough, they're going to see other things.
Right. Right.
So, yeah, it was scanxiety is huge for
Very
all of
real.
us. And I think, the more wins I've gotten, the easier it got. But when I was first diagnosed, and I guess I wouldn't recommend this to oncologists, but I never abused it. I just had to know where my medical oncologist was at all times in a way I could get a hold of her.
Mhm. Meaning that in case
If she wasn't here and I was getting a scan, back then, though, they didn't put it on my chart. I mean, now you know everything before the doctors. For me, that's okay because I feel like I can go in then prepared with my questions.
Yeah.
I can't imagine. And this happened to my sister. I read her my chart. She didn't understand it. I knew she had cancer.
Yeah. Yeah. I know. I've recently helped someone who was just diagnosed metastatic, and it is a blessing and a curse. I like data. I like to, and now I have been in this cancer world for long enough that I have a general understanding of what these reports are saying. But it is really challenging for people as they're getting, new scans to process that information emotionally and then rationally try to discern what they're saying in those reports. It's challenging.
And you might be having like a week or two before you even get to see your medical oncologist.
Yeah. Right.
And I remember one time they had seen something and I was so anxious. And I remember going to see Dr. Graylow, and she immediately got on the phone and asked for this one super radiologist and said, can we talk about this, right in front of me? And he was like, yeah, it's scar tissue.
Right. Yeah. What everyone wanted to hear. So, did the vaccine give you an extra mindset of relief, or how did it factor into the feelings, the emotions of of being worried about what could happen? Did it help alleviate that a little bit?
Well, Dr. Desis clearly explained that a phase 1 trial was really about safety, and they really didn't know how the drug would help or hurt us. I knew it wasn't going to hurt me. And I thought all it's going to do is help me. And again, from my perspective, I was like, well, if it can give me a little extra push, it's like you get the flu shot and then you get the flu.
Yeah.
But if you've had the shot, a lot of times you're not going to have it as bad.
Right.
So I kind of thought, okay, this is going to help me push me out. That's
Hmm.
all I kept looking for. I never looked for, as I call it, the C word, cure.
Yeah.
I never looked for that. I
Hmm.
looked for something that could push me out till the next drug was available, till the next vaccine
Right.
was available.
Hmm.
But then I think because we had such good results, you know,
Yeah.
with the trial, I don't understand why, and I really struggle with this, why these vaccines aren't picked up more by pharma.
Right. And so I think what you're saying is, hey, look, here's a bunch of people, like, a good amount, half of your study that had phenomenal results.
Right.
So why are we not moving this forward at a faster clip? Right? Why are we
Right.
not offering this, even in its early stage, right? Like, sure, maybe we can improve upon it, but even in its early stage, there was a great deal of success. So I know the people that are listening to this are the patients like you and like me are going to absolutely be asking that question. And I want to make sure that all of you that you think about getting involved. I know you've been involved in a lot of patient advocacy to try to push this forward. There is now something called the Vaccine Coalition, the Cancer Vaccine Coalition, which has started as a movement to try to get these vaccines to market to patients faster. Do you want to speak to that?
I haven't been involved in that yet. I just connected with them. But the woman who runs our um, group, our advocacy group for the Cancer Vaccine Institute at the University of Washington, she is very involved. And so I think that she is on the board for that, which I think is phenomenal because
Yes.
she can help them push that. And I do see more and more trials coming up with vaccines. A
Mhm.
lot of times it's for early stage patients, which, bravo.
Yeah.
But come on, let's help the people that are dying, right?
Right.
I mean, they're not going to probably die of their breast cancer. But those of us who are metastatic, you know,
Right. Right.
I
Trying
feel
to.
like we need to focus on that. Maybe I'm being selfish, but I guess I am because those are my friends. Those are
Right.
my people.
Right. Well, and if we could get rid of metastatic disease, we would have an enormous impact on life for everyone, right? Like, people
Right.
don't die from stage 1 breast cancer, they die from stage 4 breast cancer.
Right.
So being able to head it off at the pass would be fantastic. But being able to help those metastatic patients would mean that you wouldn't die from it anymore. It would be a chronic disease, and
Right.
that is a would be a game changer.
Right. I still think there's a group of us that, have DCIS, right? They tell us we're cured, and somehow something happened where those cells escaped way before maybe there was even a palpable tumor, and they sit out there, those disseminated tumor cells, and
Right.
they, stay quiet.
Right.
I'm not sure how or why, but I know we've talked about this, and I feel like I need to just say this quickly that there's a group that is working on what is going on with postpartum women within 10 years of having a baby and you have breast cancer. And I know it's Dr. Pepper Schwartz. Is that,
Dr. Pepper Shadin
thank you. And who's the other?
and Dr. Ginger Borges.
Yes, yes. And my friend Linda Weatherby is very involved in trying to get a clinical trial started um, for that time period that happens after you stop nursing because these cells are in a state of changing the breast cells. And they think that there might be something that they could try and do to stop that. And so, for those of us who had early stage breast cancer then and became metastatic, which I believe as you're younger, you have a higher chance of becoming metastatic. Don't quote me on that, but I'm almost sure it's more aggressive in younger women.
Yeah, I just want to reiterate what you were saying, which was because it's my story as well. So I had DCIS. I was told I was cured. There was less than a 2% chance that this was ever going to come back. They didn't even put me on tamoxifen or any other hormone suppressor. It was just surgery, and then I was on my way. And just to reiterate what you were saying, it's really important that the doctors take DCIS seriously. And I know many people who have become metastatic, and their original diagnosis was DCIS. So if you're telling patients that there is no need to, you know, no need to worry, no need to really think about it, I think it's a disservice because I think people need to be aware and conscious and thinking
Right.
about their choices so that they try to make sure this doesn't come back. And if they see signs that there might be something wrong, that they
Right.
go to their doctor and get it checked
Right.
out. Sooner is better. Always
Right.
with
Right.
cancer.
And I
Sooner is better.
understand, they don't want to overtreat those women who truly are cured. And I get that. But we need to figure out who's going to progress and who is, their cancer is cured.
Right.
I think that's a huge area to still be looked at. And I do think there's a whole group of us in that younger stage, right after having a baby within the 10 years, that develop breast cancer.
Yeah, that's
So,
right. And in fact, um, women that have earlier stage postpartum breast cancer, meaning stages 0 to 2, those earlier stages actually have a worse prognosis than a stage 3 cancer.
I didn't
So,
know that.
yes, the chart is on my website, outperformcancer.com, and you can see what the research shows. The stage 0 is the worst. so, so worst prognosis, 3 times more likely for metastatic occurrence 10 to 15 years later, and 3 times more likely to result in death. So we need to take this very seriously. Very.
So, how long from your original diagnosis to your metastatic?
13 years.
That's we did talk about that because
Yep.
that's exactly what my friend Linda's was.
Yeah,
I think
13
almost.
years.
Yeah.
But I want to go and ask you again, Terry. I want to dig a little deeper
Yeah.
into the time period after you received your first cancer vaccine, when you were on your road to becoming cancer free, and you were living your life, raising your daughters. What else, if anything, did you do at that time to try to keep yourself cancer free? Everybody's going to want to know, because everyone's going to want to be just like you, because we all want to live
Right.
22 years later after a metastatic diagnosis. So, are there any insights you can provide? Anything else that you did that you can share?
You know, I would love to say I have the silver bullet, but I don't, right? I just tried to take really good care of myself, and I was lucky enough that I could do that. You know, I tried to sleep well, I tried to stay hydrated, I exercised, I did weight-bearing exercise. I watched what I ate, I stayed at a healthy weight.
Now, I'm going to run through some things, and you tell me if you engaged in this or not. These are things that I think a lot of other cancer patients might take at least at some point or experiment with. And there's varying levels of data supporting whether these things might be helpful or not. Melatonin. Have you ever taken melatonin?
I have taken melatonin.
What about curcumin or berberine?
Yes. Curcumin, I definitely think, well, we know that cancer is also tied to inflammation, right? So things that can help with that, I believe, certainly can't hurt.
Right. That's right.
That's how
So,
I feel. And could they even help? Yes.
yes, I take curcumin as well.
And we need more data on that.
We do. We need more data because it is not a slam dunk. It is not something that has been proven to help cancer patients, but there is some data on it. And
Right.
so I encourage everybody to do your own research and talk to your doctor about it because we're just
Right.
patients. We're not
Right.
doctors. But as a patient, yes, I take curcumin as well. And I've also read that berberine could help. And I've taken that at some point. Have you ever taken berberine?
I must have read something recently because I just got some in the mail.
Yeah.
I ordered some berberine. But I do think it's really neat that there are more and more naturopaths who are working with oncologists, and there are some naturopathic oncologists, which I think are great. I think if I was at a different point, maybe I would pursue that more. But I feel like, okay, whatever I'm doing right now is working.
Right.
So I don't want to upset the apple cart too much.
Understood. Understood. Let me ask you about your gut microbiome because there's been a lot in the press in the last couple of years about the importance of the gut microbiome and its influence on the immune system. Do you generally feel like you have a healthy gut microbiome? Did you do anything special in order to try to help facilitate that? Some people make sure that they eat like kimchi or some sauerkraut every day or different things like 30 different fruits and vegetables a week in order to keep a healthy gut microbiome. Have you ever done anything with that intention?
I think it's really interesting that when I was on chemotherapy in particular, I craved vegetables and in particular cabbage.
Interesting. Okay. Cabbage is known to be really good for you,
So
especially for breast cancer. Hmm.
I ate a ton of salad because that's what I wanted. Right.
Interesting.
Yeah. So my gut, I took a meprazole. Another thing no one really tells you, right? So I'm so nauseous. I'm thinking it's the cancer in my liver and it's growing. And that's why I'm so nauseous. It wasn't, it was my gut. And I had, different, um, I'll see brain cramp, GERD, right? I
Okay.
had GERD. I didn't know that's what that was. And so once I took that, everything settled down. And I haven't taken probiotics. Um, I I struggle with hydration, and so I try to stay on top of that. I drink a lot of lemon in my water,
Mhm.
because it tastes good to me.
Yeah,
I try to
sure.
do things that I like and are good for me, right?
Right. Sure. But the interesting thing is, vitamin C that you get from the lemon is important because our bodies can't make vitamin C. And so we have to get it from outside sources. And so it's good to have. Now, I will just make a note that for people who are actively taking chemotherapy, chemotherapy is a pro-oxidant. So while you're taking chemotherapy, you don't necessarily want to have a whole bunch of new antioxidants you're throwing at it. So a lot of people decide, I want to have the healthiest, I'm going to be really healthy now. And I just encourage you to look at some of the literature which suggests that some even multivitamins and some taking a lot of antioxidants at the time of having chemotherapy may not be the best thing for you. It may be a terrific thing to do after you finish chemotherapy, but not
Right.
while you're in chemotherapy. But let's go back to some of the other things that you might have done. Have you ever taken any other supplements like sulforaphane or eaten a lot of cruciferous vegetables like
Oh,
broccoli?
yes. The cruciferous. That's what I feel like I was really craving. That I still crave broccoli. It's kind of weird. Um,
So you eat a lot of it
yes, with pasta.
with pasta.
I'm Italian.
That's great. Well, sulforaphane has shown that it can have protective um, properties for cells. And so, one of the things that they think that it does is that it could prevent mutations. So, it's interesting because perhaps that might be something that protects the cells from further mutation, which could then lead to recurrence. So, again, that needs to be proven out with more research, but there is some research out there, actually quite a few studies that you can look at to see where that information is right now.
And what's that called again?
Sulforaphane.
Really?
Um, it's you can find it on my website, and it's
Okay.
actually Dr. Jed Fahey out of on Johns Hopkins is the expert. He lives in Maine. I've talked to him frequently. He is awesome. And they need clinical information, but he has a lot of information from the lab and mice work to really understand that it upregulates this NRF2 pathway and allows and creates a protective nature for the has protective nature for the cells. So
I have to ask you this kind of an aside. What do you know about ivermectin?
it's on my list to do a deeper dive. I know that uh, there is a lot of interest in it, and there have been some clinical trials with it. And it's not because it's an antiparasitic. It's that it has a mechanism of action that can do something else for you as well. So I'll send you some information that I have on it if you'd like.
I'm not, people ask me all the time, and I did start to do a little research on it to see what's been published.
Yeah.
You know,
It's
but
it
it's a
is
really hot topic.
it is and because it is one of those things where um it's an existing drug, and it might allow it might be able to be repurposed. I also think there are a lot of people that do have parasites of some sort in their body.
I totally agree.
And so, I think what happens with a lot of research is that they do a study with a broad group of people, and they don't do the testing required to understand how the different people in the study are the same or different. So, it would be good, for example, they just did a big aspirin study, but they didn't do benchmarking to look at inflammation or inflammation markers in the people that were in the study. So they were like, doesn't work. And I'm like, doesn't work for everyone? Like,
Right.
I mean, if you have a group of people and half of them don't have any inflammation issues, but the other half do, like perhaps it makes a huge difference to the people who have inflammation and also have cancer. You know, Perhaps we're just looking at too big of a cohort and not looking at any additional lenses. We're not putting any lenses on this to really understand who it benefits and who doesn't. So, yeah, I mean, that's something I really struggle with. So let's go back for a moment to talk about your lifestyle. You said that you exercised, you ate well, you slept. So all the biggies, all the biggies.
Yeah. I
And
don't always sleep well. That's something I struggle with. So, I find for myself, and I certainly don't want to prescribe, but I find that if I take a magnesium supplement, that helps in a variety of ways.
Mhm.
I feel like I notice a difference. I've been prescribed so many different medications for sleep. I always feel groggy the next day.
Yeah.
For me, so far, that has worked the best.
Have you ever taken melatonin at night?
Yeah, I didn't get much out of that.
No. And so you didn't take it regularly.
I did. Oh, it didn't really help with my sleep. I don't know.
I've heard that could be a supplement that might uh, be a good anti-cancer strategy, not just in helping you sleep, but that it could actually be beneficial with a different mechanism of action. So I didn't know if that was something that you had taken for a while.
Yes. Yes, I did for a while. But oh, that's interesting. That's really interesting.
And what about aspirin?
CoQ10, um, that CoQ10.
Oh, CoQ10.
Yes, I've taken that off and on. I'm taking it again. I just sometimes I'll run out and then I forget, and I take an omega 3.
Mm-hmm.
And then, I've really struggled, and I don't mind sharing this. I originally, when you start chemotherapy, I was a young woman and it just stopped. My hormones, it just shut me down. And I really struggled with that. Um, and again, my doctor said to me, you know what? Now's not the time to be a hero. Because I was like, I don't want to take anything. And to this day, I take an antidepressant. I'm not afraid to say it.
Yeah.
It helps. It just helps me. I feel like I need it. I feel like my hormones just went nuts.
Yeah.
And I want to live my best life. And if that's what it means, that's what it means. I do think there's a bit of a stigma still with that, which is unfortunate.
Hopefully disappearing, hopefully something that's disappearing, because one of the things that I've seen with patients who've been, really successful harkens back to what you were saying about finding something joyful in every day. And it's a mindset shift of really being happy in your life, finding moments of joy, and being able to feel like you're living your a purposeful, wonderful life. And I hear from the patient advocacy work that you do, it is purposeful, right? You are helping others. I know that you're very involved as a patient advocate. So I don't think any of those things are by accident.
Right. I do feel like, in a way, this is what I was supposed to do.
Yeah, I think so too. I think so too. Um, so, can you tell us what inspired you to become a patient advocate in the first place? Like, how did you? I didn't even know, I was diagnosed and it was like a few years in before I even knew that there was something called a patient advocate, like, and that it even existed. How did you come upon being a patient advocate?
Well, I first started probably in 2004 or five, working in the rooms. My breast oncologist, like I said, she pushed for that. She thought I would be really good, and then I just asked her some questions like, "Well, what do I do about this or that?" And I remember her saying to me, "You need to meet people where they are, and then take it from there." And I think that was huge. Advocacy has come so far since then. We kind of sat in the back of the room originally, and there was very little conversation. Now, the researchers and the medical oncologists, they look for us for our input.
Yeah.
I work with some researchers at the University of Washington, and I really enjoy that. Now, do they talk over my head a lot? Yes. I don't have a science background.
Mhm.
But I'm not afraid to ask questions, and they're really good about taking the time to answer them.
Yeah.
I've learned so much about research. I had no idea um, how much pressure there is on researchers also to bring to create trials and to bring in money, because they are not paid a lot from their university or comprehensive cancer center. A lot of times their salary is tied to that somewhat. And I think that that's sad, because I've seen how much time and effort it takes that they put into these applications. And as someone who's reviewed applications, I can just see the blood, sweat, and tears, they've put into this. And again, it makes me so sad that, the NIH, so much of that research is going away.
Yeah.
We used to be one of the most aggressive breast cancer subtypes. Now, with the invention of Herceptin, Dr. Slayman, thank you, right?
Yeah.
Research again, now we have one of the best outcomes. So I feel like things are moving in the right direction. And I would say if you are experiencing progression, there are more options today than there were before. And hopefully you'll have more options as well. Does that make sense?
It does. Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Um, do you ever think about the fact that your participation helped pioneer a treatment that could help countless others?
Have I thought about that?
Yeah.
No, I just don't think that way, about myself. Um, but I am excited by it. And I am frustrated that they haven't been able to do more with these vaccines. I don't understand. I just don't understand. Now, I know, breast cancer has a lot more mutations than a lot of other cancers. So it might be harder for them to create vaccines. But gosh, let's give it a good try.
Yeah. Right. I know. It seems like, given your cohort and the success of your study, it seems that the cancer vaccine definitely had an impact on your outcome.
Right.
And so, with that in mind, we certainly would like to see that available for more patients.
Right. And, to this day, people find my story somewhere and they reach out to me. I spoke to a couple, I don't know, maybe 6 months ago, and they were so interested in seeing if she could be eligible for a vaccine. Um, and it's heartbreaking because, again, young mom,
Yeah, young mom.
new baby,
I get it.
metastatic.
I get it. So, if Dr. Desis were listening to this right now, what would you say to her?
I'd say thank you for all the work that you've done. She's an amazing scientist. And she doesn't take crap from anybody. She just gets focused and she goes, and it will be someone like her who makes this happen for all of us who have breast cancer. I love that woman.
I do too. Yeah, I do too. How has surviving cancer changed the way you live your life?
Oh, yeah. I mean, I think I explained that earlier when I said, I live a very purposeful life now. I don't think about, tomorrow, I could do that, or the next day. If I don't want to do something like with the kids' school, I used to feel very obligated. I got to the point where I was like, "No, I don't want to do that. So I'm not going to do that." And, so that was one thing. And then, I try to do things that I really enjoy and find what brings me joy every day. One little thing. And like when you're busy with your kids, it's really hard to find that. But if you think about it, you'll find it, even if it's 5 minutes. I think we all need that for our spirit.
Yeah, I think so too. Thank you so much for coming today and talking to us. Your story is amazing. It's inspirational. And we are so lucky to have had this time with you.
Thanks for having me. I really enjoyed talking to you too.
And now, an important announcement. All the information that was provided today was for educational purposes only. I'm a patient, just like you. I am not a licensed or accredited physician, therapist, or clinical researcher. All information provided is not intended as a substitute for the advice of a physician, therapist, nutritionist, or any other qualified healthcare professional.